From Unum, it was to be a further 5.5-mile walk to the fort at Salernum. It is worth noting, there is a policy in place which forbids any filming or photography of exhibits within the museum. This doesn't apply to the remains of the fort within the grounds. So, having paid our entry fee, we made our way down to the River Tyne, and as the bathhouse was closed, well, we decided to make our own arrangements for a little light relief to the old plates of meat. Salernum, the Cauldron Pool, built to guard the bridge which spanned the North Tyne River, the first major obstacle of the wall on its route east to west. It was, in all probability, built by the 6th Legion and garrisoned by the 1st Vangonium Cohort, a mixed unit of cavalry and infantry from the Upper Rhine region, which had been split between here and the fort at Condursum, modern-day Benwell. The museum and fort, with full amenities, along with helpful and courteous staff, is certainly well worth a visit, and there are enough remains of the fort to offer a general insight to the buildings, their construction, purpose and use, even down to the partial remains of a hypercaust heating system within the Praetorium. But the building which seems to gain most attention is, of course, the bathhouse. At first it can seem like a confusing collection of walls, rooms, diagrams and descriptions, so let's see if we can't bring it back to life. The Romans would have referred to their bathhouse as either the Thermaea or the Balnea. These baths were in use for well over 200 years, during which time changes would have been made, so let's explore what we have. On entering the bathhouse, you would now be in the Apuditerium, the communal changing room. And before you commence your bathing experience, you may of course wish to go and spend an Asurreus. That's spend a penny.
Oh, that's very nice. Better than one at home.
Problem is, there's no newspaper. Water from the baths would also have been used to flush the human waste out into the nearby river. A hot, dry room to the west of the baths may have been a later addition, but this would have been known as a laconicum. With its own hypercaust system, the heat would have been so intense that you would have needed to wear sandals and probably sat on a wooden bench. Before entering the next room, a slave would probably have rubbed olive oil all over your body. Oil was used because bars of soap hadn't yet been created. The next room was the sudatorium, a steam-filled vaulted sweat room. It also contained a caldarium, a room with a hot plunge bath. A boiler, sitting directly beneath the pool of water, generated the steam, while the hypercaust system helped to heat the floor and the caldarium. The existing floor plan of the bathhouse shows only the one doorway into and exiting the sudatorium. However, there is structural evidence which suggests there existed an earlier doorway which directly connected the sudatorium to the next room, the tepidarium. The vaulted roofed tepidarium is the dry, warm room which helps you acclimatise before the shock of entering the final room of your bathing experience. The frigidarium, the cold room with a plunge bath. All that remains is to add some wooden beams, a tiled roof, and now we have a representation of how the bathhouse at Salernum may have looked many years ago. here's a little gem for you. Green carts, bed and breakfast, or you can pitch your tent. Absolutely stunning vistas. Yeah. And just over to my left is Hadrian's Wall itself, made to feel very welcome. Oh, and this is just cracking. I think this is called roughing it. Yep. Well, good morning from the B&B at Greencart Farm. At the moment I'm being plagued by midges and horseflies. It's now 5 o'clock and at 7:30 we'll be having a full breakfast, and by 8:30 we'll be back on the trail. From Greencart's farm, we made our way back to the wall, heading towards the next fort, Boccolitia. But there are a few things of interest along the way, such as Limestone Corner. The Roman legionaries were real opportunists. What had happened was they came across a natural crop of stone here, so they got the lifting equipment up here and lifted these great big chunks of stone straight up from the area and plonked them here. Then they would have split them. That's when the stonemasons would have split them down even further and started to create the 18 million stone blocks that was required to build the wall. I'm sitting on top of a block of stone here weighing several tons. Now, prime example, here we've got some slots in the rock. These are called Lewis holes. There's 1, 2, 3, and they started one here, 4. What they would have done is fit a Lewis hook into there. A Lewis hook is a very simple but effective tool used for lifting stone. It consists of 5 basic components, but first, the stonemason has to chisel out a recess into which it fits. In this cross section we can see this recess has a dovetail shape. Then the Lewis hook would have been assembled in the following way. An additional pin may have been used to lock the components in position. And with our Lewis hook firmly fixed into position, all we need now is something to lift it with. We could, of course, use one of these, the Roman polyspastos crane. With 4 men working the winch, this piece of equipment could lift 3,000 kilograms, which is just over 3 ton. By adding a tread wheel and only 2 men working the winch, the lifting capacity could be doubled to over 6,000 kilograms. A stone relief from the tomb of Quintus Iterius from the 1st century AD shows a nice example of a polyspastus being used. I couldn't quite fathom out why the Romans had left that big rock sitting there in the middle, so I got them back to finish off the job. Alright lads, and lift! Only kidding. From Limestone Corner we continued our journey towards Boccolitia, crossing the B6318, also known as Military Road, which, as a matter of interest, has nothing to do with the Romans. Military Road was built as a direct result of the 1745 Jacobite rebellion, led by Bonnie Prince Charlie. General George Wade instigated its construction at or about 1746. It was largely built using the stones from Hadrian's wall and the forts along its route, and it has come to be considered as one of the most destructive operations of the wall in recorded history.